Welcome to another episode of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. Really excited about today's guest, Mina Fahim, CEO and President of MediView. Mina, how are you doing today?
Good, Mike. Awesome to be on the show. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. I appreciate it. We met most recently at TCT. I think I was walking down the aisle and saw the incredible technology and stopped and said, "Hey, this looks cool. What is this?" And I think 5 minutes later, I had the headset on and was immersed in a completely augmented environment. And I don't get caught off guard or shocked with technology in our business very often these days. But I was it was such incredible tech that at that time I think I offered the opportunity to come on the show because I thought it would be such an incredible feature for the audience. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come over and do this, and looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the technology, but also some of the really challenging problems in healthcare that you guys are trying to solve. Without any further ado, I think the best way to describe this, and you tell me if I'm butchering this, but I guess I would term it holographic augmented reality for surgical navigation. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean it's you got to use some descriptors because like as you saw, right? It's not something people expect. So you got to
Yeah.
call it something. I think that's a pretty good description of it. Exactly what MediView does.
Yeah, no, I mean it is incredible technology. I always like to start the show with kind of the origin story, how you got involved. Um, I think that it's obviously it came out of the Cleveland Clinic, and so that always gets a lot of notoriety and whatnot. But the story doesn't end there. I'd love for you to just kind of tell how you got involved with this and the origin of the company, and then we can get into the tech.
Yeah, and let me just say, Mike, saying that you found it interesting walking down the hall is kind because people are like, "What are you doing?" They see it's weird. You've got this headset on. People are playing with their hands. They're talking to themselves. So thank you for
Yeah.
calling it interesting because people have used other adjectives to describe what it looked like in the headset. So no, it was awesome meeting you at TCT, and I'm happy that it led to our conversation today. So yeah, happy to give you a little bit of the origin story, both of MediView and myself, because they are actually different. And in full transparency, I'm not one of the co-founders of MediView. Actually, the company, which is really the star of the show today, was founded, like you said, out of technology that was incubated out of the Cleveland Clinic. And it's got an amazing background story. Really, it's the intersection of a clinician and a PhD computer scientist answering the fundamental question: can we use technology to give clinicians their greatest gift of vision? And that really was the core question they were asking, saying, as an interventional radiologist, this is Dr. Chuck Martin at the Cleveland Clinic, he really asked the question: I could benefit from better visualization in these minimally invasive procedures to take my tool to a target. And he happened to know Dr. Jeff Yanoff, PhD, at the Lerner Research Institute, which is the biomedical engineering arm of the Cleveland Clinic. And he was working in Carl West's lab, which is known as the West Lab at the Lerner Research Institute. And they had just started experimenting with this concept of augmented reality. So if you think back 5, 6 years ago, there was this huge fad around Pokemon Go, right? And
Right.
everyone was like, gotta catch Pikachu and gotta find Mewtwo and all this stuff. So if you think back to those days, it really was that beginning time of when augmented reality was becoming, I won't say ubiquitous, but more exposed to everyday use cases, right? Gaming.
Yep.
Now you can kind of have your phone and it shows you, hey, walk this way and take a left. Really kind of in the real world. So the technology was actually started by Dr. Yanoff and Dr. Martin out of the West Lab on an iPad, basically saying, can we use an iPad as a window into the human body? And they started figuring out, hey, we think we can put holograms of a patient's anatomy under their skin. And it sounds far-fetched and it sounds sci-fi, but they actually were able to do it on a bench study. And then before they even got to animal studies, there was the release of HoloLens, which is a Microsoft product.
Right.
And Jeff had this really epiphany saying, I think I can move this thing from an iPad to a pair of glasses, which would allow the hands to be free. It would put nothing in between the clinician and the patient and give the clinician superhuman vision.
Right.
So it really was at the West Lab where this idea was incubated between a clinician and an engineer. And actually, the West Lab was working on another project, and our co-founder John Black got connected to this project. But Carl actually told him, "Hey, I just want to show you this other thing that we're working on the side." And John saw this technology, and at the time was working for OrthoFix, and he was blown away. And he said, "This is the future of medical imaging."
Yep.
And he called his buddy Adam Rakestraw, who's the other co-founder, and him and Adam had worked in the orthopedic space together, and said, "Hey, I just saw the future of medical visualization." And Adam's a lawyer by training, so skeptic. He's like,
I was going to say very skeptical.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's like, "Dude, I've seen it all, right? I've worked on Stealth Station, the O-arm. I've seen it all." He's like, "Hey, just come down. We'll have, if nothing else, you'll get a good meal out of it, but you got to see this." Adam went down, checked it out, and quite frankly, put the headset on, the HoloLens 1 at the time, and they said, "We're going to take a shot on goal here. We're going to start a company around augmented reality surgical navigation," back in 2017. They incubated the company, uh, did 5 in-human procedures at the Cleveland Clinic through the Biomedical Engineering Institute at Lerner, and then had enough proof points to say, we're going to go out and raise a $4.5 million seed round. And that's really when the journey of MediView's foundation intersects my journey. And,
Yeah.
the reality is I was at Medtronic, and I actually started the Augmented Reality initiative for the cardiac division at Medtronic. And we found out that there were pockets of people working on this augmented reality technology in spine, in liver, in kidney. And we started realizing, hold on, there's something common here. And
Yeah.
I was able to partner with a couple different folks, and we went to Medtronic and said, hey, what if we did something as a collaborative effort across the businesses with Microsoft? Long story short, we ended up finding a way to fund some efforts that actually led to some early proof of concepts using a 20-year-old navigation system that we were literally dusting, off the cobwebs, literally, that hadn't been touched in 20 years. And we got this 20-year-old navigation system talking to this augmented reality headset. And we knew there was something there. I'm going to kind of fast forward through my journey there, but how I got connected with MediView, Mike, was I got tapped on the shoulder by the VP of Business Development and said, hey, Cleveland Clinic's looking for a judge for their pitch competition. And their domain this year is visualization and AI. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go to Cleveland. I've never been there. I'll check it
Right.
out. I got sent out to be a pitch competition judge. MediView was pitching, and it was John and Dr. Martin who were basically telling the story about how they were equipping docs with X-ray vision. And I'll be honest with you, being an engineer by training, Mike, I was like, I don't believe a word you guys are saying, right?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
claiming that you've done what
This
we're
is
trying to
what you think you're going to do.
exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then fundamentally they pitched really well. They ended up winning the pitch competition. And if I fast forward, ultimately what ends up happening, I met these guys and I got a phone call 10 months later saying, hey, we just closed on a seed round. We're looking for someone to lead technology and strategy. what do you think? And I was like, guys, I don't even believe your technology. I don't believe you can do what you're saying. So I said, hey, come out here, check it out, then decide for yourself. Um, Long story short, Mike, I ended up seeing the technology, got permission from my wife to leave Medtronic, go be employee number one of MediView. There's a lot more detail in between there, but we've grown the company to 34 employees now. We are revenue generating. We've raised just under $30 million in funding, some dilutive, some non-dilutive. We're actively raising our Series A. That's a 30 million plus or minus, and we're really at a point where post 510K clearance this past summer, we're actively doing in-human commercial clinical cases for things like biopsies, ablations, drainages, etc., with some great partners like Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, Cornell, and increasing the number of folks who are using the system.
That's incredible. Yeah, there's some big names you're dropping there in terms of facilities that don't, the bigger facilities, they do a lot of research, but getting them to actually buy technologies, new technologies, that's a whole different gamut. So the fact that you've got legit institutions like that buying in is some pretty significant social proof. So you touched on kind of biopsies, drainage. Um, what's maybe just talk a little bit about the specific use case, the problem that the technology was created to solve, because imaging and visualization is paramount in any surgical procedure, right? But with the indications that you guys are focusing in on, or the indications that this was initially built for, I always think it's neat to know, okay, what was the challenges physicians were experiencing around tumor ablation or whatever that is, where they said, if we could only see in there, right?
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, because I think it'll kind of
Yeah.
give you a perspective on the question you're asking, which is a very good one. Hopefully, that's coming through for you.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Mike, right? The problem that we are fundamentally tackling is poor visualization leads to lack of confidence getting a tool to a target in minimally invasive procedures like ablation and biopsy. And, clinicians with a lot of repetition and training become proficient at it. But you're inherently trying to solve what's a 3D problem in black and white 2D fuzzy images. And
Right.
the doc has a bigger problem for them to solve, which is deliver safe and effective care to the patient on the table. So we should, as an industry, think about how do we reduce the cognitive load and the learning curve so that the doctor can focus on the problem at hand of safe and effective treatment. And at the end of the day, that really comes down to give them intuitive visualization, right?
Yeah.
And we don't think about what we do at MediView, Mike, as technology for the sake of technology. We think about this in the sense of this is a long-standing unmet clinical need around visualization that we think about technology as a solution to that need. And what you're seeing here, Mike, is fundamentally imagine you're wearing a pair of glasses.
So that's the up top. That's the headset that the physician has on when they're seeing this.
That's right. So if you look right here, you'll see this clinician who's wearing these set of glasses. And
Yep.
what they're seeing is what you're seeing in this little picture in picture here. And what you're seeing,
Unbelievable.
Mike, is that the doc can literally see through the skin of the patient the anatomy in full 3D. And I'm going to rewind just a little bit so you see it. They're able to turn anatomy on and off so that they see what they want to see when they want to see it. So you'll
Look at
see
that.
us, turn layers on and off so that, hey, now I see just the tumors. Or hey, now I see, my different structures like the liver, the kidneys, the spine. But we don't just
Yeah.
show them the anatomy, Mike. We also show them the instrument and where it's going. So, if you will, it's kind of like the Google Maps of surgical navigation. Does that make
Right.
sense, Mike?
Yep. That makes perfectly good sense. Look at that. So that's the ultrasound probe that he's holding over the pelvis.
Yeah, I'm really kind of glad you called that out. That's what honestly sold me on MediView, and what's so unique about us, Mike, is we are the first company to get FDA 510K clearance to use augmented reality for soft tissue anatomies, meaning things like the liver, the kidney, the gallbladder. And the reason we're able to do that, Mike, is because of the integration of a live imaging reference that is ultrasound. So
Yeah.
that you're basically seeing the ultrasound like a flashlight into the body, and you are fusing the live imaging from the ultrasound to the 3D CT or MRI that's projected under the skin. But it doesn't stop there, Mike. What's really special, and this is part of our FDA clearance, is that if the anatomy is shifted from what the ultrasound is showing, the hologram will snap into place based on the reference of the live ultrasound.
Wow. So they're interconnected in a certain way.
I think when you and I were talking about this, Mike, you used a really nice way of saying trust but confirm, right?
Yeah. Trust but verify. Yep.
Exactly. Trust but verify. And that's exactly what you have. You have, very high accuracy registration of the hologram, but you verify with the live imaging and ultrasound.
Now, can you back that up so that the audience can see and point out where the instrument or the needle is going in? This would be a tumor ablation, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So if you can just point out, because I thought that when you showed this to me live, that was just one of the most incredible things is you can see when the needle actually gets inside the tumor.
Yeah. So,
What? Yeah, right there. What what's that? Um, the little ice cube like looking thing.
yeah, good question, Mike. So, just to be very transparent, that's actually something that we do have unique IP on that we are actively developing. But what you're seeing here is in the world of tumor ablation, Mike, one of the hardest things to do is verify, did I kill the entire cancer? Did I really freeze or heat all the tissue that needs to be uh, treated so that I reduce the likelihood of the cancer coming back down the road? And then, it's funny, I don't typically show this image, but I showed it here, is that we obviously are showing where we can start giving clinicians at least early indication of, here's your treatment zone and here's your anatomy and here's where they overlap. This is not a cleared part of our
Right.
technology today. It's not commercial. But what you're seeing is the vision of how we marry the treatment to the imaging so that the clinician has the information they need to inform their clinical decision making at the point of care before they close the patient up. So
Wow.
that's where we're really headed as a
Let's be clear that that's not FDA.
it is not.
There's no indication for that at this point. But when and if that happens, that will be an absolute game changer. To be able to show the physician to be able to guide them to the site of ablation and then be able to show them what could potentially happen if they ablate at that specific site is becomes very powerful.
We think so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that becomes very powerful.
it's an
That is,
exciting journey.
and man, I mean, when I had this headset on at TCT, my mind just started racing with like, there's so many different applications where you could take the technology. You had showed me the inside of a stent, and we're flipping the stent around and moving it and increasing it the size. there's endless applications for the technology, and to your point, from my time at Medtronic, many moons ago on the angiography side of the business in coronary, you'd have biplane angiography, but you're still, to your point, it's 2D plus, and these types of technologies are, to your point, going to absolutely change the game in the way physicians not only deliver care, but I should say diagnose patients, but also in the way that they deliver care, and couldn't be more exciting. What is there anything else like this on the market?
Yeah, I really got to give a lot of credit to some of the players in the space. Augmetics is doing some great work in spine.
Yep.
They're doing some work with pedicle screws and implantation of pedicle screws in the spine. There's MediViz, who's doing some interesting work in neuro and training and education. There's a company that came out of Case Western University based on some technology developed by Dr. Mark Griswold, who's been in this space. He's considered one of the foremost leaders in augmented reality for education. They spun out a company called Illumis. It's proving, Mike, that this space is here to stay. It's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. And where MediView really is differentiating ourselves is the use of AR in soft tissue structures, in
Yeah.
the abdomen, imagine someday in the heart, right, where you're able to see a heart valve being deployed in real time. And
Yeah.
that's something that is definitely where we're headed. It really is a platform, Mike, that already today we've used it in 4 or 5 different anatomical sites without even changing the software, right? So
Yeah.
that's really exciting because we're starting to prove out that this technology is going to become as ubiquitous as the standard of care imaging modalities,
Yep.
ultrasound, CT, MRI,
MRI.
etc.
Yep. 100%. 100%. No, I think you're spot on. What seems like science fiction today will be standard of care, 5 years from now, or whatever it takes. But and I think robotics is a really good analogy for this, because when Intuitive came out, everybody was like, "Oh, that's going to be an expensive paperweight, and it'll never fly mainstream." And it took a lot of time for that, because that was a much bigger lift from a workflow perspective, and all of that. Whereas this technology is much more plug and play. It's actually not even so disruptive to the workflow as it is complementary to the workflow. But now, I mean, there's over 100 robotics companies out there, all trying to play in their own little silo or their own little niche. And I think this could, you guys could be on the cusp of pioneering that's the augmented reality space, much the way Intuitive did in the robotics market. What's the talk a little bit about reimbursement and the commercial model?
I'm actually really happy, Mike, that you kind of dovetail into reimbursement right on the tails of robotics, because I had the fortune of actually listening to Dr. Mall, the founder of Intuitive Surgical, speak last week. He was the keynote speaker at Mayo Clinic's Bears Innovation Conference, where I was presenting
Yep.
alongside Dr. Judy Bowie, who leads breast oncology there. And Dr. Mall really talked about this from the sense of early on, the robot didn't have reimbursement, right? The selling points around efficiency, safety, and let's not sugarcoat it, the marketing benefits of an institution where you started hearing patients say, "Do you have a robot?" And
Yeah.
that
And they were
was
putting billboards up on the side of the road saying, we have the LA's first robot or whatever.
and that hits very close to home, Mike, because one of our board members, Scott Mullaney, was the former CEO of Blanchard Valley Health System in Ohio, and he was one of those early adopters of robotics. And he said, the reason he decided to invest and be part of our board was he saw the same thing you just said, Mike, is that I'm not going to claim that AR has all of the same value props around robotics because they will augment, no pun intended, each other and be complementary as this technology evolves. But when you think about the lightweight form factor of what this is and being able to be used in rural areas or maybe institutions that don't have the capital budget to purchase something like a robot, you start creating this more ubiquitous platform that could be used for a number of different procedures. And where
Yep.
that dovetails, Mike, is on the reimbursement part. Augmented reality will have its own reimbursement codes as the
Yep.
space continues to grow. The reason we say that with such conviction, look at 3D printing. There are
Right.
codes for 3D printing that have shown, for patient prostheses matching, of picking the right tool and the right implant for the patient, they've shown the benefits of planning that with 3D printing. Institutions have built entire 3D printing practices based
Yep.
on this at hospitals. So when you think about that,
And that technology is not that much further along than where you guys are in the life cycle of medtech ecosystem specifically.
that's spot on. I mean, actually, if you think about it, Mike, they're not far at all. We use the exact same file type that gets fed into a very expensive 3D printer, and we
Yep.
render it as a hologram, like you saw in a very lightweight headset. And
Yep.
the price and the form factor of headsets, they're going to look like this in less than 5 years. I was
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be in Seattle a couple weeks ago, and I got to try a headset on that is going to change the entire space of augmented reality. I haven't been excited about a augmented reality headset in 7 years. I'm excited now.
Wow.
It's an incredible solution that's coming to market in Q1 of next year. We're going to have some early access to it as a company, one of the first healthcare applications, actually. This company has a massive uh, Department of Defense contract. They, really are making plays in industry with one of the biggest companies, not just in medtech, but in the world in augmented reality. So this space, Mike, is only going to pick up, and you're right. The ability to use technology like this is going to be increasingly seamless from the time the patient gets scanned to the time the doctor has superhuman x-ray vision is going to be on the scale of minutes. And that's really where
Yeah.
the space is headed.
Yeah, and to even take it a step further, not just treating, but man, there's going to be indications for this in the ER. Patient comes in, right pain on the right side. Do they have appendicitis? You start thinking through like some of these applications, which I know you have a team that sits in Cleveland and works on this stuff all day long. But you guys are not going to be short of any avenues to continue to pursue as the company grows. So it's exciting, man. I like I said, I don't get caught on my heels very often with technology, but you guys definitely did so at TCT, and really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and present such an exciting product. And I extend an open invitation as you guys continue to grow and get bigger with future indications. You got to promise to come back and do an update show when appropriate at some point in the future.
Yeah, Mike, I again really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. And just leading up to this, you've been great prepping. And, I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to the MediView team, just the people that have made this possible. Because, yeah, I'm an engineer by training, but I'll tell you, this technology doesn't get to the bedside without the group of people that are working day in and day out on this, on the technical side, the commercial side, all of our awesome clinical partners, whether it's Dr. Martin at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Pua at Cornell. These really are pioneers and trailblazers that are saying, we're willing to take a risk here. We're willing to go out on the ledge. So, the highlight of today really is the company and the people behind it both inside and out. And frankly, Mike, folks like yourself who really want to help tell the story of what you called science fiction now becoming science fact. So it's a
Yeah,
very exciting time, and we very much appreciate the opportunity.
absolutely, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and wishing you guys continued success. That is it for this episode of The Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. Tune in next time, and appreciate you guys listening in.
Thanks, Mike.